David Laney, it's a pleasure to have you for the first time on the Single Track
Thanks.
podcast.
Thanks so much, man. Thanks for having me on. It's awesome.
I know we will talk largely about UTMB in this particular conversation, but I do want to get a little bit on your current job at Craft. I think you talked with Dylan Bowman about this a little bit on Free Trail, but it seems like a pretty interesting model where you represent your organization in a couple of different ways. So can you give some insight into that?
Yeah, totally. So in 2021, January, signed a contract with Craft Sweden, exclusively to run. So just a basic general running contract. And then in November of 2021, I was had gone out to our U.S. headquarters in Boston and was just doing some stuff for them. Tommy was running the New York City Marathon. I was running the New York City Marathon. So we were just at the headquarters doing a few product stuff. And they were like, hey, do you know anybody? Like we launched footwear where we need basically like tech reps, but more than that. In the US, like, do you know anyone who'd be interested? And I was like, yeah, I know a ton of people. I would also be like, that sounds like a lot of fun. I've always wanted to have a running role transition into a full career, long-term career role. So I'd definitely be interested. So we started that, basically the next week. And we've grown our tech rep force since then. And so it's been super fun to be part of like a launching footwear project.
Yeah, it's super interesting to me because, and I think Tracksmith also does this to some extent with Mary Kane and Nick Willis, but you always wonder, like, if you're one of the athletes at the top of our sport, like someone like you is, what happens when inevitably those performance high competition days are over? And I know that you're a long ways away from that, but it's cool that there are clear opportunities for ways to extend yourself and really make this an end-to-end career beyond races. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Next question here. I'll preface it by saying that basically every August, as sort of like a holiday tradition, I rewatch Billy Yang's UTMB video from 2015. And this is going to be a long comment before I ask you this question, but
no, that's good.
There's a scene in the film, I know you know it, where I think our mutual friend Ryan Gelfie says that you have one of the hottest fires burning for this sport. And I think at that point in time, you were like as committed as it gets. You were living out of your car. You were chasing after the biggest, the best mountains. But I also understand that there have been a few years since where you considered like opting out of at least the competitive part of the sport to some extent and pursuing other opportunities and career moves. So I guess my question is, if you had to gauge where your stoke level is for training and racing these days, where is it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love training, and I actually love racing as well. I've always loved training more than I've loved racing, actually. Even in college when like track and cross country were the thing, like I like going running most days. And a lot of times I'm someone who easily falls into the trap of enjoying training so much that it gets in the way of racing.
Yeah.
Like that's definitely an easy trap for me to fall into. So yeah, I still love running, maybe more so than ever, I think, giving myself a little bit more freedom in the last couple of years, in terms of training. Training used to be really, really rigid, in, workouts and recovery days and, so on and so forth. Now it's a little bit more fluid. I think there's a lot more big mountain days, that than I used to be able to do. And I just have the, opportunity and capability right now to do a lot more long day. I might go 15-minute miles for 8 hours. But I enjoy that quite a bit.
Right on. Well, other than, and again, I should preface this by saying I've been watching your racing so far this year. I thought Free Trail did a great job of capturing your final miles at the Gorge 100K, and you're just motoring like low 6-minute miles to the finish. And I'm just like, you still got it. So other than being, obviously a few years older, you still look great, by the way. Can you compare and contrast the athlete you are now versus like the athlete you were, let's just say between like 2015 and 2017? And I know you mentioned a little bit in that last question, but maybe give us a little bit bigger picture.
So I think, it depends how far you want to go back and how far you want to dive into it. But from 2000, I'm in fifth grade, I'm like 10 or 11 years old, to 2016, February 14th, 2016, Olympic day of the Olympic trials marathon. I was someone who was fully consumed and obsessed and created all of my adequacy and identity as a person on running the Olympic trials marathon. I think Bruce Springsteen says something like, what you don't surrender, the world just strips away.
Oh yeah.
And I think I had to die to that part of myself, to ever be able to run. Like when you just put so much weight on something that it doesn't really deserve. Like, running's a great thing. I enjoy going running. I'm not saying it's bad. But when it becomes something that it doesn't deserve to be, it will, it'll ruin you and destroy you and do everything else. It'll let you, running is inanimate, so it won't destroy you, but it will allow you to destroy yourself. And that's probably the worst kind of destroying.
By the way, that's one of the best songs ever dropped on the Single Track podcast. We'll link to Human Touch in the show notes for sure, the live version. It's so easy, and even just as like a media person and someone that's not a competitive runner, but just a fan of the sport, it's so easy to get stuck on the UTMB treadmill. Like, I cannot honestly tell you when I'll stop going to Chamonix, but it's going to be for many years to come. You took, I think, at least from a racing standpoint, you took 4 or 5 years off. So talk about the reasons for the break and then the motivations for returning this year.
Yeah, totally. So last year I was signed up for Ultra Trail Monte Rosa. And then, Craft wanted us, the whole team, to go do Ultravasan in Sweden. So I had decided to not do UTMB, to do Ultra Trail Monte Rosa, and then ended up doing Ultravasan instead. So that was 2021. 2020 UTMB obviously was canceled. 2017 I ran UTMB. So 2018 and 2019, I think, part of it was just having to step away. Like, I went to Chamonix both those years and trained a little bit and, tried to do some other things. But I think UTMB really is a beautiful race. You really have to be in the right, I don't know if headspace isn't the right word, but you kind of have to, sorry, my stomach's growling. You kind of have to be in a certain way to want to go over there. Yeah.
If we were to talk expectations for a second, and again, acknowledging that there are other important reasons to line up for a race, also acknowledging, and I was telling Tim Tollefson about this, in my mind, and probably in your mind too, you have nothing left to prove. I mean, you are right up there in terms of the most accomplished American athletes ever at this race. With all that said, do you think that a performance like you had in 2015 or 2016 is still in you and maybe in you for this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it is. I think trainings in certain ways has been a lot better. Sometimes it just doesn't matter. Sometimes it just doesn't come out in training. It comes down to if you're just ready to get nuclear the last 100 kilometers. And sometimes it just comes down to how nuclear other people are getting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's definitely hard having gotten third and fourth and then 14th. Like, well, let's be honest. Every year at UTMB, I've gotten worse. At some level, like, it's also not like I just want to get around the mountain, and that's always been the only goal. Like just finish the loop, get around the mountain. It's like there's so much. It's a competitive race, and it's like the Olympics or the World Championships. You have to be ready to compete, but at the same time, it's like such a beautiful experience. I don't know. There's just like so many facets of UTMB that I obviously want to go compete.
Yeah.
And trained hard for it. But it's just like a kind of different mentality than I have going into Western States or a different race.
Last question I have for you. At least among the American audience, I don't think a lot of listeners are well acquainted with Craft's trail shoe line. And so Can you talk about the shoe that you might be using on race day?
Yeah, totally. So when we started developing shoes, the goal was for Tommy to run across Sweden in 20 days, 65 miles a day.
Wow.
In one pair of shoes. So we made the CTM Ultra, which is kind of our gravel bike or our Subaru Outback. So it's kind of a door to trail idea, but kind of like a bigger version of that. So it's really light, like a trail shoe would, or like a road shoe would be.
Okay.
But it's stable like a trail shoe. It's got great traction on the outsole like a trail shoe, but it's also really smooth on the road like a road shoe. So It's kind of that yes and.
Yeah.
So we made the CTM Ultra as kind of that gravel bike. And then from there, we've made, more road specific shoes, the Pro Endurance, which was just like Gear Junkies, number one shoe of 2022. And then we've got pure trail shoes as well. The shoe I'll run in will probably be a Proto coming out in January 15th.
Okay.
So yeah.
Right on. Exciting times for Craft. Well, man,
it's super fun.
It's been such a pleasure to chat. I appreciate the insight into your inner life heading into this race. We'll make sure to link to all of your social media in the show notes. We'll give a shout out to Trails and Tarmac as well. Shout out Brett. Shout out Ryan.
Yeah, Brett. Yeah.
And anything else that you want to leave the audience with before we go?
Thanks so much for having me on, Finn. It was awesome, and appreciate all you're doing.